Against Identity. This is a One School for All lecture by Andrew Thomas at the Østfold University College, which I would like you to watch by Monday the 30th of October, this coming Monday. So we're going to talk about identity this week. And I guess identity is a little bit like the flip side of government. It's government from the bottom up. Who you are, the knowledge about who you are, and then your reaction to that, perhaps by owning it or playing with it or feeling loyalty towards it. That's one of the things that makes you governable, especially when we're talking about the plague model. What is it that fits you into the plague model? It's who you are, it's the knowledge about you. And of course, if that knowledge about you is not firm and constant, then it makes you less governable. Now, we could talk today about religious identity or ethnic identity, and they certainly are governable groups. But obviously we've been looking at testing, we've been looking at assessment in schools, so I'm going to focus on these things, and especially looking at identity as something problematic about you, some knowledge about you that will that means you can adapt your treatment of your own life. So the first thing is, one of the options, one of the reactions, possible reactions to knowledge about yourself, knowledge about who you are, is just to reject it, and to reject it as knowledge which is not in your interests, however legitimate or well-founded it might be. This is a rather different move from criticising knowledge on the rather weak basis that nobody knows me as well as I know myself. You don't really know yourself. So it's more along the lines of, why should this knowledge affect me in any way? Granted, there is such a thing as this knowledge, but I'm not going to accept it. As Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds put it in their marvellous song "Push the Sky Away," and I quote, "And if your friends think that you should do it different, and if they think that you should do it the same, you've got to just keep on pushing, push the sky away." So either way, whether it's a positive or a negative judgment, the point is you push the judgment away and try doing things differently. Oh, it's not even that, because he says even if they think you should do it differently. Point is, you develop things yourself. You develop and you push the possibilities. And here the sky is something that's really objective. It's actually there. He doesn't doubt the existence of the sky. He's just saying pushing away. It's a total rejection of staying put, of remaining loyal to any kind of knowledge about you, or reacting to criticism in ways in humble or ways where you feel yourself kind of trapped, or certainly somebody else has had insight about you. It's the rejection of all that and saying, I'm not going to be the same as I was when you saw me last. I'm going to be different. I'm going to push the sky away. The future doesn't have to resemble the past. Now, that's exactly the opposite of the point that we made a few weeks ago when we talked about one of the advantages of diagnosis as being something that you can own. The owning your diagnosis, or at least owning the knowledge about yourself, is, of course, being queer is not a diagnosis, but it's certainly a terminology, it's certainly a category. And the queer community, or the gay community, basically just owned it. When they were accused of being queer and weird, they basically said, well, yeah, that's me, and they took the sting out of the stigma. They faced up and faced down that stigma. They organised, they resisted, but essentially there was no, however much they recognised the existence of homosexuality as a thing, they just said, well, yeah, that is us, but what about that? What about that? We're gonna, why should I deny that? So they essentially said, I'm going to be found, I'm going to let myself be found in society, and as such they established a place to stand. So this is all about denying the stigma, and essentially, like I say, accepting the diagnosis. And of course, once the stigma of a diagnosis has been drawn, once the stigma of knowledge about you has been drawn, there's a whole variety of attitudes you can have to your own identity. However good or bad other people might think of it, you can actually own these things, and this is the slogan that had been made famous by a Slovenian philosopher, Slavoj Žižek: enjoy your symptoms. It's not just that you have to suffer this abnormality. You don't have to feel yourself marginalised. There are lots of things that you can do with what other people consider as your problem. maybe you can actually have a good time with your symptoms. Maybe you find yourself extremely dashing when you're wearing glasses. The point is, once the stigma has been drawn, you can be creative with these symptoms. You can accept them, but in lots of different ways. You don't have to accept them lying down. But of course, the disadvantage of all this is to a certain extent the erosion of scientific terminology, and we see a lot of pop psychology in today's society, which may bring a whole set of stigmas back again. Now, all these are various ways of reacting to knowledge about the self, but it helps little to the person who is actually experiencing oppression or discrimination on the basis of that knowledge. You can't require somebody to own their symptoms or own the accusation or knowledge about themselves if they are not feeling that it's serving them. If they are a victim of discrimination, then that's not necessarily something they can turn around and say, that's okay, I want this terminology. You can't require people to be brave. Sometimes they can be brave, and you can admire them once they are brave, but you can't require them. It can't be mandatory bravery. It has to be chosen. Requiring bravery just adds to the discrimination. You just add one more requirement. You can't be like this. You've got to be marginalised, and also you've got to be brave, and you've got to take it. I don't have to be brave, I, the Teddy, but so why should the gay community have to be brave? There's an inequality there. Similarly, it's entirely possible that enjoying or owning your symptoms actually make you more governable. So these arguments can actually go both ways, and it's difficult to see any of these arguments, any of these different ways of dealing with knowledge about yourself coming to an end.